Second episode of the Good Boss podcast, catching up with some of my bosses over a 30-year corporate career. I, Ajith Sundaresh, will be meeting Afzal Modak. Afzal was my boss at a mid-level point in my career and also played crucial roles as a mentor at different stages in my career. Today, he continues to inspire and mentor several young businesses. Let's catch up with him and see what he has been up to and what are his thoughts. So, Afzal, thank you so much for taking the time, spending a few minutes with us on a topic which is, I guess, been beaten to death quite a bit, frankly. Leadership, being a boss. How does that change through circumstances? We'll explore that aspect of it definitely as an underlying theme. We'll also talk about different things. In your 40 plus years of corporate plus entrepreneurial experience. How you have gone through it. So, let me start by maybe taking a slightly negative approach to the whole thing, right? In terms of, look, all of us, personally, I have had 30 bosses in my 30 plus years of corporate career. And some have been great, some have been good, some have been bad, some ugly. Frankly, most have been good, you being one of them. But yeah, you would have obviously, had different experiences with different types of colleagues and bosses in particular. Anything which you would like to particularly talk about where you've not had such a good time, and how have you managed to go through that?
Thanks for coming out today and trying to interview me. I thought you were a smart guy making a lot of good decisions. We'll have to see if this is a good one or not. But see, at the end of the day, there are all sorts of people, and you work with and work for all kinds of personalities. And there should be a way to rise above it. But if you want me to specifically point out some traits, there are people who are a little bit old-fashioned. They worry more about how many hours you work and not what you produce. Yep. Or people who just want
more
to show.
More input focus than output.
Yeah, and they want more intensity. I remember having a boss who was saying, Afzal, you're such a thought person. You should show more intensity, have more coffee, or something.
Sure.
So it's not as much about matching or meeting a certain look and feel. To me, those are superficial things. So you have to put up with some of those individuals. But at the end of the day, I think you have a common alignment of purpose.
Talking of intensity, let me, so this is not anecdotal. Obviously, you were my boss in GE, and it was a happy coincidence how we sort of, got to get to meet each other. You're looking at sort of moving something, and then I kind of helped out on a project basis, and then you said, let's. But then one thing which struck me about you was the fact that, look, you were a GE officer in GE, and GE conglomerate, the huge company, GE officer, top 500 in the company. But no one would have really known about it, and you never made a big deal about it. You're so understated, calm, cool, where you had real alpha male aggro, men and women, sort of trying to make a point, and you were kind of the soft-spoken person. How did that cause challenges? Because India being new, and everyone is aggro and intense out here, right? So, did that cause challenges for you?
No, I think it's all about what you want to achieve. In fact, that job, when we're referring to what is now Genpact, and back then it was called Jackis. That was a manpower-based game, right? Yeah. So many people. So you cannot have just the boss who is command and control. Yeah. To find a way to get people to open up with you and give you all kinds of inputs, not just the good stuff, but also the bad stuff. Mm-hmm. And in fact, we were responsible for so many services and deliveries of global businesses. So creating that culture of being approachable and being one of them was a very conscious effort, I must say. And I'm glad that worked out. We had so many amazing colleagues and subordinates, and I think including yourselves, who just made the project so much more successful.
No, absolutely, and we did some very interesting stuff. Right, I wasn't involved in one of the bigger projects on one of the reconciliation-related matters which you sort of spearheaded. But then the very fact that, in many cases it was proof of concept, in terms of moving
Yes.
dysfunctional function, sort of
Processes
processes
and
and then trying to
operations.
move it into a common platform and then making a difference in a fairly intense environment where expectations are right up there and you want results, but I think we navigated through that pretty well. And frankly, I mean, one of the things which might have been a blind spot for you, but there was a perception, because since you're soft-spoken and all of that, did you bat for your people? I mean, there was that perception. Did you bat enough, as opposed to aggro people? But in my personal experience, I can, I can definitely tell you about, after my stint in Hyderabad, the move to the US in that whole space, where we are looking at exploring options for
Sure.
selling this as a concept to GE's customers. That is a role which you put me up for, as a, saying that, look, so it's more perception than reality in many cases. But I think that's one trait which you displayed, and is something which.
Yes, yeah, I think it's also the space, right? I mean, we were working in finance and accounting with a lot of different smaller, high-value processes as compared to customer service or call center. So it required, by definition, a little bit more deeper understanding and working with the businesses a lot more closely. So I think if you measure by outcomes, I mean, we have had more than 150 of our colleagues transplanted into foreign jobs, into roles which have become.
And some of them are doing very well. They've taken on global leadership positions.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look across the company, and even in India or abroad, lots of senior controllers, CFOs, division controllers, and CFOs are all. One way or the other, many of them have been connected to us. So something has worked in terms of how we have progressed.
So let me maybe kind of segue a bit. Segue a bit in terms of, look, we talked about bosses, so-called bad bosses, whatever, some traits, common traits. What about the good traits? I mean, what is it that makes, and I'm sure you had your share of great bosses during your career, and how have they shaped your thinking, molded you into something, which helped in the long term?
So I think the ones that stand out are the ones who end up growing you as an individual. I mean, there is so much eagerness to command and tell people what to do. But I think the four best words are asking people, what do you think? You can always describe a problem statement, but do seek input from people. And it is surprising what you may learn, and ask people to give scope and approach of whatever the issue that you're trying to solve, versus being, once in a while there is no choice but to just get something done. But in most cases, you can ask people, and the best you can do is just grow a lot of people into leaders that you want to be, or make them even better than who you are. So that I think is the sign of a good boss, would be how to grow subordinates who get ahead.
Grow your people and make them probably even better than you are.
Even better than you are. Exactly. So that's probably the single biggest objective.
You were in GE for a considerable amount of time, a fairly large portion of your career. Then now you're involved in multiple things, particularly in the startup space, and through the entire journey. I mean, anything where you think you could have done things differently?
No, I think one was very clear to get some good understanding of emerging markets and what it takes to work with SME and micro SME businesses of all these countries. There was some curiosity about understanding the life of a middle class person or life of a small businesses, and if one could figure out a way to solve that or make it better. So that was always a driving force, and even though one had the lens of a large corporate or a bank or something like that, visiting industrial towns and understanding the life of small businesses was always very, very fascinating.
Afzal, maybe taking a bit of a segue into managing your busy corporate and career schedule and your personal life. I mean, how has that been has been a challenge for you? How have you been able to manage it? Have there been stressful times when it took a toll and you really you're left thinking, what am I doing? I mean, any snippets on that, and some lessons probably?
So I think a lot of people talk about work-life balance. I think that's a very difficult exercise. One has to kind of enjoy the journey, and the spouse is very much part of the life. We spent about a decade in America, and then next 20 years living through 6 countries, right? Thailand, Hong Kong, Turkey, London. So it's not easy, and the kids get a much broader view of diversity and foreign countries and difficulties, what have you. So you have to make that commitment to live through some of the issues that come along once in a while. You have to take a pause and pay attention. But ultimately, it's about the journey and learning, and you got to have enough quality time for work as well as the time that you do take with your family is make it count.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, make it count.
Yes.
That's an important. That's good. So, Afzal, this is looks pretty interesting. I mean, it looks like billiards, foosball, a lot of stuff all rolled into one. So, what exactly is this?
So you asked about work-life balance. I wish I could play golf. But in an office setup, the people can only play with these little things.
Okay.
So obviously, this is a miniature billiards, you can say,
Okay, got it. So you got to hit. Okay, so is this your favorite ball? Why is white your favorite color?
White is the cue ball, which
Okay.
we can hit, and
Alright.
through this you control the outcomes.
The outcomes,
So I
yeah.
think
All right.
And,
So now that you have, let me try and control one outcome and figure out if the yellow ball will go into the hole. I hope I don't damage this, but anyway. Oh no. The white shouldn't go in, right?
never
Anyway.
accept that.
So, yeah, so but you have played sports before, haven't you? I mean, I believe you're pretty good in volleyball, right?
Yeah, and I think, in the school or college days, one tried to do something, and the team sport makes more
Yeah.
sense than to play individually, and
Yeah,
that's what we've done. Tried to, because even business is like a team sport.
So it's interesting you tell this, right? So because right now, in the current environment, where you're dealing with a lot of, and you have, we have all been there, done that. We are the average age of the employee is 28 years old. I mean, these are young millennials, Gen Z, whatever you want to call them. They're used to a certain way of working. You have been, for 30 years, I believe, in GE, at fairly senior positions, and then for the past 10 years, you've been setting up your own mentoring, in some cases setting up multiple sort of businesses, smaller enterprises, working with smart young kids, right, who like to work in a different way now. I mean, so, and frankly, you might expect them to come 5 days to office, but the reality is many of them don't want to. So do they need, I mean, I don't want to go into a controversial aspect of the question, but I mean, what are your thoughts in terms of how do you manage in the current environment the workforce, which is looking at different things?
And I think the purpose to me has to be supreme. There are jobs which you can, which require presence in the office, and there is a certain value to being team and so on. But today's day and age, you can't be watching people clocking the time card. You have to give them some autonomy and independence, and define the broad objectives.
So, Afzal, I mean, we have spoken a lot about, your GE corporate career, some of the learnings from there. We spoke about leadership, good bosses, bad, great bosses, so on and so forth, leadership as a culture. I would like to spend some time now delving a little deeper into what you're currently doing. I mean, when I say currently doing, let's take after your 30-year corporate life, and over the past 10 years, you've been really deeply involved in a lot of interesting stuff, multiple companies, some as mentors, some as investors, predominantly focused on making a broad-reaching change at the grassroots level. So can you give me maybe some examples, or something which has worked?
So I think after 30 years, you keep thinking about what is the next act. And of course, one could have continued with a corporate career or work for a private equity company or something. But the desire was to build businesses and act like a seed investor. So a few names I will throw out. There is Mom's Belief, which is children who have slow development, autism, special needs. That business has got an award from United Nations, and works in partnership with Lego, the toy maker, and so on. Similarly, but the focus was on this GST, and GST enabled digitization that comes.
GST is a great thing. I mean, you keep telling that,
Yes,
right, in terms of how it's
because
changed
to me
things.
it's a fundamental change which removed all the indirect taxes from various states and replaced with one. A lot of my friends tell me that GST is still complicated, and my answer is it is GST may be bad, but what we had before was a disaster. So now we are trying to digitize commerce. So Captain Biz is our another business which is making micro SMEs do their billing and collections and purchases using e-invoicing and whatnot. Then Tax Genie is helping with all the GST compliance and getting suppliers paid through pay invoice. But the one that I can highlight today is Branch X, and we are in this office of Branch X, and it was a remittance company where let's say financial inclusion is a main objective. People who come from small town to big cities have to send money home. I'm going to show you this card. This is a prepaid card from Branch X, but it comes in a pair. So you can give this to the family. You can load this money here, and family can withdraw from ATM or swipe it at the POS machine. So you're uplifting the individual, you're uplifting the family. And
but can I counter that? I mean, why a card? I mean, you pretty much do everything that you said using your phone. I mean, that happens in a chai wala dukan or anywhere. So why a card?
So I think we are looking from a lens of an elite. I mean, today the fact is in a rural India, probably 30% of the country still has power cuts. You can't be comfortable with OTP and all the smartphones at all the levels. So these kind of things do have a need to fulfill. But on the other hand, I mean, we also have got apps and cards and digital cards.
But this is probably tackling a segment which is till now disenfranchised in terms of having access to. So you're providing access.
This is financial inclusion, but let me step back beyond this. So I think ultimately you say you want to help people. How do you help people? You got to give them job. You got to give them solutions. To give jobs, you got to build businesses. You got to build businesses that have network effect, so that lots of people can be involved in that enterprise. So my bias is to invest in businesses that have network-based fulfillment and delivery models. And time will tell how big we become.
No, but why leave the comfort of the US, and come to India, of all the places, to do what you're doing?
Yeah. No, so I think it comes down to defining what is your contribution and what's the impact. And I think if the success is defined as driving one more fancy car and spending time on the golf course, then I agree with you. But if it is about uplifting 1,000 or 10,000 or a 10 million number of people, then you got to do that in a more orchestrated manner. Now, one person cannot do it all, but if you can be the catalyst and build some businesses that have very far-reaching impact.
And if I may ask, how difficult has that 10-year journey been? I mean, has there been times when you felt like like pulling teeth from someone, getting...
Oh, it has been crazy. First time when I came, my sister says, Afzal pagal ho gaya. It's gone bad. and that is true. And my brother and other people said that, how can you invest in these businesses, which they couldn't even visualize. But today they can see that there is action, there are transactions, there are people which are employed, and we just came out of GFF, the Global FinTech Fest, where this Branch X business was on display, and among the people who visited were the Reserve Bank of India and NPCI and so on, who want to collaborate. I think the government has done a remarkable job of creating this FinTech phenomena. Now, it's not without its speed bumps, but I think there is no limit to how fast you can grow and make the banking accessible to people.
More power to you on that one, Afzal. Really, I mean, you're doing some serious stuff with high impact, broader reach.
Let me one more thing. So a lot of people ask me, what is your criteria for investing? What businesses do you pick? And my answer typically is the businesses that are addressing a big problem. I don't really care what the solution is going to be, but you want to aspire to delve into something which is big and far-reaching.
The bigger the problem, the bigger the impact.
Bigger the problem, bigger the impact. So that is, if one has to define a single criteria, the problem has to be worthy of solving, and it better be big. Because you're going to spend the time, you might as well attempt something bigger.
All right, so on to different problems. You're solving the access problem, the inclusion problem. There are several others, and we don't have any dearth of problems. And it's great to have folks like yourself, who's kind of in some ways giving back to society what you have picked up through the course of what you've done through the years. So Afzal, we are in this space. There's some office renovation work which is happening. We're in the middle of this construction zone, in a safe spot, nevertheless. Bang in the middle of this bustling ecosystem, right? You have the washi station, you have multiple kirana shops out here. I mean, there's lots of stuff happening here. And when you enter, I mean, it's obviously you get into a swanky office, but there's a whole lot of life going on there at the micro level. And that's, I guess, a large part of the problem we're trying to solve is for folks like that. Talk a little bit about that, and plus the fact that your set of companies is also probably a ecosystem in its own right. I mean.
So if you step back, I mean, India is known for the big business houses, whether it is the Ambanis and the Adanis and what have you. But we forget that this $3 trillion economy, which is going to go to 5 and 10, is really made up of a lot of micro SMEs and the ecosystem. And it's visible in the tier 2 and tier 3 towns. So that is where the reach is. And we have an ecosystem of businesses which are empowering those micro SMEs and their inventory and their supply chain and their GST and their skilling. So it's a full suite of businesses that can allow you to operate in an emerging market like India, and if you can, then you can actually translate that to other emerging markets. In fact, immediately looking forward to countries like Saudi Arabia, which has gone through so much reforms and has got crazy ambitions.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's a scalable model.
Yes.
And if you can make it work in India, you can probably make it work, with tweaks, of course, in any geographical sort of destination.
Yes, because the commerce at the end of the day is same. So you are tech-enabled, and think of all the things: inventory, delivery, e-commerce, logistics, reverse logistics. Not the fancy mobile phone. What about the repairs and the parts and the whole 9 yards?
The last mile.
Yes, the last mile and the whole ecosystem to run the commerce.
All right, thank you, Afzal. It's been a pleasure.
It's good.
As usual.
So
thank you.
Glad to be part of this.